Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Tensei Slime light novel summary series on AniMonolith. Continuing the events of the previous part, while Ramirez's group is complaining about Guy's service. To stop Ramirez's complaining, Guy finally spoke up. Since he was the one who summoned Rimuru, he said it was only natural for everyone to rush over. He then reminded Rimuru that he had already told him to drop the honorifics when addressing Rain and the others. Rimuru had completely forgotten, and both Rain and Misery encouraged him to call them by name so they could feel closer to him. Rimuru realized that Misery understood him well. He usually used honorifics either when he wanted to keep his distance from someone or when he had to be cautious around them. But once he grew closer to someone, he naturally switched to calling them by name. Still, there were a few exceptions, like Trainee, for whom he continued to use the San honorific without really knowing why. While Rimuru was still thinking about how to address everyone, more voices chimed in. Luminous pointed out that Rimuru should have been calling her by name. Leon agreed, he said. "You're so brazen, I don't think that you can fix it now." Rimuru accepted their point and promised to call everyone by name from now on. Once the commotion died down, Rain and Misery went outside to meet Milim and Degruel. The others stayed behind and helped themselves to the snacks on the table. Soon after, Milim burst in, full of energy as usual. She complained that while Guy was allowed to call her any time, he should at least inform her beforehand. Frey had told her that this was proper manners. "Is that so, Frey?" "Well, yes." "Guy-sama?" Guy turned to Frey and Carrion as well, telling them not to use honorifics either. Everyone in the room was strong enough to deserve equal treatment. Rimuru agreed. Even Leon's subordinates, despite having less magical capacity, were highly skilled. Frey and Carrion had also awakened as true demon lords and reached the million class, so neither of them could be treated as simple subordinates anymore. Frey accepted Guy's request, and Carrion laughed, saying he had never been good with honorifics in the first place. He had always had the aura of a king from the start, so his irreverent attitude felt forgivable. When he asked Guy why they had been summoned, Guy told him to wait until Dagruel arrived. He also admitted he was surprised that both Frey and Carrion had awakened. Frey responded with a smile, saying this was the result of Milim's careful planning. Carrion agreed, claiming that Milim must have thought they would die in future battles if they remained weak, so she gave them the chance to fight humans and evolve. Milim loudly denied everything, but her embarrassed reaction made Rimuru realize they were right. Milim was clever when planning things, but she always struggled when cornered, just like that time Frey had dragged her back home to study. To steer the conversation away from Milim's flustered protests, Rimuru told Frey she didn't need to call him Rimuru Dono or use any honorific at all. But Frey refused. Rimuru was Milim's friend, and because Milim was her master, Frey insisted he was someone who deserved respect. Frey also asked Rimuru to stop calling her Frey-san, which turned out to be a tough request for him. Calling Carrion by name was fine, but addressing Frey without an honorific felt awkward. Rimuru had a clear weakness. Whenever he stood in front of a beautiful adult woman, he felt his confidence drop. Milim was basically a child, and Luminous looked like a young girl, so they didn't trigger that problem. But if they were a little more mature, Rimuru would probably struggle to react properly. On the other hand, when the woman in question was someone like Shion, whose personality could be overwhelming, all of those barriers instantly disappeared. With people like her, Rimuru had no trouble at all. In short, he suffered from a strange and stubborn condition. Guy burst out laughing. "So, Rimuru, you're bad with adult beauties, huh?" "Huh?" Rimuru froze, shocked that Guy had figured him out so easily. "That's good to know. If I ever need something from you, I'll just turn into a beautiful woman." "Absolutely not. If I know it's you, none of that would make me happy." Rimuru was so embarrassed that his tension evaporated on the spot. Shion jumped in, boasting that Guy could never win his attention anyway, since Rimuru already had such a beautiful secretary like her. Then Diablo stepped forward, far more dangerous than Shion. "Kufufufu, Guy, you're overestimating yourself if you think Rimuru-sama would ever be interested. I could easily learn to transform into a beautiful woman, and if Rimuru-sama wished—" "I do not wish that! Stop right there!" Rimuru shut Diablo down immediately before he could say anything even crazier. Moments like this made Rimuru regret not bringing Benimaru along. Though knowing Benimaru, he might have caused trouble too. While waiting for Dagruel to arrive, everyone kept chatting, the atmosphere lively and chaotic in its own way. Demon Lord Dagruel finally arrived. He came alone without any attendants, yet his presence alone was intimidating enough. After Rain guided him to his seat, the massive stone chair visibly warped under his weight. No one commented on it, but Rimuru definitely noticed, and he was sure everyone else did too. The cracks running across the hall's walls made it clear something had happened here, but Rimuru kept quiet because he didn't want to get involved in whatever trouble caused it. Now that everyone had gathered, they had no choice but to move on to the real topic. Guy announced that things had become complicated, and that, for once, he wanted to borrow everyone's wisdom. Hearing Guy say that made Dagruel turn serious. Rimuru, meanwhile, felt that Guy definitely wanted more than just their wisdom. Guy stood up with a smile and said they would be changing locations. He wanted a private discussion with the Octagram to talk about cooperation. Rimuru muttered to himself in disbelief, since Guy's smile didn't feel like anything good. Still, refusing was impossible, so everyone reluctantly followed. The new venue was a separate hall with a round table and drinks already prepared. Guy sat at the head of the table, and Rimuru sat directly across from him. From Rimuru's perspective, Milim was seated to Guy's right, Ramirez to Guy's left. Leon sat to Rimuru's right, with Luminous positioned between Leon and Milim. Dagruel sat on the opposite side, and an empty seat remained between him and Rimuru. That seat, of course, belonged to Dino. Dagruel casually pointed this out. "I don't see Dino. Do we have to wait for him?" Everyone turned to Guy, who simply looked at Rimuru. Rimuru instantly felt targeted. Guy clearly knew something. Rimuru had no idea how deep Guy's information network ran, but it was obvious he had a solid grasp of the situation. Rimuru reluctantly explained. Dino had betrayed them and defected to the enemy. It was likely the result of Michael's ultimate dominion influencing him, although his true motives were still unclear. Whether he acted under control or out of his own intention remained uncertain. Dagruel, being Dino's friend, couldn't hide his shock. He muttered to himself, struggling to process the news. "Michael, you say? Are you telling me that a skill can have a will of its own?" Guy clearly had no idea why Dino betrayed him, and his reaction showed it. "That's right, there's no doubt. At this point, the skill has developed an ego, taken over Rudra's body, and is now acting as Michael," Rimuru said with confidence. Since he had CL, he understood this phenomenon better than anyone. "Hold on, Rimuru. You said the ultimate dominion affects skills of the angelic system. But how are we supposed to tell which skills belong to the angelic system and which belong to the demonic system when the concepts are so vague?" Luminous cut straight to the heart of the question, and it was something Rimuru himself was wondering. Before Rimuru could answer, Guy stood up. "I'll explain." He then shared a surprisingly detailed explanation about skills, revealing secrets about how the world actually worked. Guy was unusually generous about it. According to him, the laws of the world were established by Veldanava, but anyone with proper administrative authority could influence those laws. Even without that authority, it was possible to rewrite the laws to a degree by channeling one's wishes into magicules. That was essentially the concept of magic, a type of power. Skills were a systematized form of this, designed so they could affect the laws of the world. Skills that reside in the soul of someone with strong will and are activated by their pure energy become ultimate skills of the angelic system created by Veldanava. Among these were the 7 powers known as the virtues. Guy went on to explain that when he fought Veldanava, the deity possessed many abilities. After stabilizing the world, Veldanava kept only his strongest power, the Justice King. Some he gave away, and the rest he released into the world. Those abilities entered the cycle of reincarnation and reappeared within qualified and powerful souls. However, ultimate skills were too overwhelming, so they were restricted to the unique skill level. They could appear scattered across different abilities or exist as unique skills within the virtue system while retaining a degree of authority. Rimuru felt that the virtues were the counterpart to the system of deadly sins, essentially forming the angelic and demonic systems. But from what Guy said, it seemed that not all virtue-type powers that appeared in the world were ultimate skills. For example, Wisdom King Raphael evolved from Great Sage, which wasn't connected to the virtue system at all. Once Guy finished, Luminous pressed him further. "Guy, if you know the truth, tell us. Are there really only 7 angelic system skills? And what exactly are their abilities?" The other demon lords were just as curious, so Guy decided to answer. He listed the 7 virtuous powers once possessed by Veldanava. Ultimate skill Justice. King Michael, mental control itself, specializing in command chains, with absolute defense like a true castle fortress. Ultimate skill. Knowledge King Raphael manages the laws of the world, specializing in support. Ultimate Skill Covenant King Uriel specializes in spatial management and oversees all phenomena. Ultimate Skill Hope King Seriel The Origin of Life, managing the cycle of reincarnation. Ultimate Skill Purity King Metatron sorts out mixed laws, prevents interference, and selects pure energy. Ultimate Skill Charity King Raguel provides support and amplification to others. Velgrind possesses this skill. Ultimate Skill Patience King Gabriel manages status stabilization and responds to unforeseen situations. Velzard possesses this skill. That is the breakdown of the skills, but only 3 of them are known to exist at this time. Veldanava gave his Justice King Michael to Rudra, so he got his Covenant King Uriel back in return. That is the one that Rudra acquired and made ultimate. There probably would have been some changes in performance, but since Rudra has gone to hell, no one can be sure. And the video ends here. Let's follow the rest of the story in the next video. Thank you for listening, goodbye, and see you in the next video.